Welcome to the Founder Podcast, where we explore the journeys of some of the most successful and inspiring entrepreneurs from around the world. I'm your host, Chris Lee, a serial entrepreneur with a passion for building and growing businesses. Throughout my career, I founded multiple nine-figure businesses and learned a thing or two about what it takes to succeed in the world of business. I want to share those lessons with you by searching out the coolest guests on planet Earth and have them share their own incredible stories. But this podcast, it's not just for entrepreneurs. It's for anyone that's looking to be inspired by these stories of people who have overcome incredible odds and create something truly remarkable. So join me on this journey as we explore the fascinating world of entrepreneurship and meet the founders that are shaping it today. Let's dive in. Welcome to the show. Today I am joined by Mr. Casey Baugh. Casey is probably one of my favorite human beings in the whole world. He has an incredible story and probably just even more incredible as a person, just the way that he gives back. Casey has an immense background as a founder. He's founded 3 different companies. He's currently active in his business, the Sandlot Partners, in which they have invested and raised capital for quite a few big names. We'll be talking a little bit about that in a bit. He also co-founded a company called Greenlight Restaurants, and I'm not even sure on the statistics on that. What kind of how many restaurants you guys have now?
You know, I should know. It's 8 or 9 different concepts and a lot of different restaurants. We've got one brand that we're scaling really quickly, and so we're adding one or two. Yeah, one or one every other week. So
yeah, that's Cup Bop, right? Is the big one? Yeah, sweet.
Yep.
Do you know about how many locations you guys are at now?
I think we're at 58 in the U.S. the last time that I checked, but we actually have like 160 in like Indonesia. It's the craziest thing. Our partners are Korean, and they have like this insane story where there's this family. It's like one of the wealthiest families in Indonesia, and what they'll do with their kids is they'll send them to the U.S. to go to school. And part of what they have to do is they have to find a business that they love and bring that business back to Indonesia. And that's kind of their college assignment. And so there was a kid that, came to the University of Utah, fell in love with Cup Bop, and kind of hounded, Jung and Doc for 2 or 3 years to let him take it back to Indonesia. And come to find out, he was like one of the wealthiest families in Indonesia, which is like a massive country. I didn't realize how big it was. And so, it's kind of taken on a life of its own.
So scaling all over the world with that one. Yeah, that's a cool story. It's Cup Bop. It's a Korean barbecue, right? Like a quick Korean barbecue.
Quick serve concept, similar to like a Chipotle or like a,
Costa Vida,
Cafe Rio. Yeah, right, Costa Vida, one of those.
Awesome. Yeah, I actually haven't had a chance to go to one. I need to swing down to Utah and catch some. On top of that, Casey co-founded a company, Manufactured Housing Investment Group. If everything's up to date on your LinkedIn profile, 260 different manufactured housing locations, provide housing for over 100,000 people. That's freaking awesome. I had an opportunity to actually go and tour a few of these communities out in Tennessee. It was pretty awesome to see what these guys do. They go in and take a community that's pretty run down. They turn it on its head, get some brand new facilities in there, provide housing for people that wouldn't necessarily have a similar type opportunity. So both doing a humanitarian aid, really like providing good quality housing, and a fantastic capitalistic model as well. So that's pretty sweet. So Case, you've got this incredible background. You've co-founded these 3 different businesses. I know. So me and Casey go pretty way back. I was actually thinking about this today in preparation for the show. Me and Casey, at the end of the summer, we met 20 years ago. And we were missionaries out knocking doors in the land of Oklahoma. and preaching the gospel, talking about Jesus Christ, and that's kind of where you got your start in the door knocking world. And then you spent, how many years was it with Vivint?
I think it was 13 years total with Vivint. 16
13
years in the
years.
industry.
So tell me about like what about that experience working with Vivint? I know you worked with at least one other company in the door knocking world. What about that was the preparation for your now crazy success that you've been having these last few years?
I actually think about this stuff a lot. I teach entrepreneurship up at BYU, and so you're with kids kind of every class that's on the front end of the journey, and you come in with just this tremendous amount of ambition and hustle and naivety, and you're just like you're so excited, a bit fearful. And I think about my journey, and I'm like, I watched a Steve Jobs, commencement speech at Stanford, and he talks about connecting the dots looking backwards and how you can never see it going forward. But when you look back, you connect the dots and you just say it never could have happened any other way. And, all the things that you're talking about from the mission, I think about those 2 years in my life and just how irreplaceable they were. And everything that I've ever done in my career, who I married, the track that I went on in life, it's like one of those coincidences that, it's almost scary thinking about it, because you're like, man, there was a bridge, or there was a crossroads that, life would have been very, very, very different if I wouldn't have gone on the mission, and it's kind of, you have those all along the way, but for me, I started knocking doors out of desperation. It wasn't, it wasn't, excited about the opportunity. It was desperation to, pay for school, and I met my wife, and, we got decided to get married. And so there's kind of this
How old were you when you got married?
process. I was 23.
23. Young by today's standards, for sure.
Yeah. Young by today's standards, and unexpected. I wasn't going to school thinking about getting married, and ended up meeting Chelsea, and it's just the stars aligned, and it just went, pretty fast. From the time we got met to the time we got married, it was about 12 months. And so,
wow.
There's the dean of Harvard Business School. It's a guy named Nitin Nori, and he talks about this concept of the truest form of dignity that you can give to another human being is to teach him to be economically self-reliant. And I think about like that time in my life, and I was not economically self-reliant. I was working an hourly job. My parents, that did not have much to give me, had kind of helped me with that first semester of school. And, I was kind of fearful. Not in like I'm sitting, hiding under my bed scared, but like not knowing what to do. I just, I'm trying to get hourly jobs, and I'm competing against students, and I can't get a job at Chili's. I can't get a job at, the old spaghetti factory in Utah County. There's just, everybody's fighting for these, $7, $8, $10 an hour jobs. And then I had a friend, that had gone out and done door-to-door sales, and he'd made $50,000. And again, this is 20 years ago. $50,000 then was $10 million to me today. Like I would have, cut my right arm off for $50,000. And so, it was kind of, it gave me this hope of like, oh man, like, one, if he could do it, I can do it. And then second, if I could really do that, that would change my life. I'd have the resources to go to school and to be able to, provide, for myself and Chelsea, she's going to school. And so I went out, and, that summer was so transformational for me. I made $50,000, but what I really got is I got this dignity. I got this like belief in myself that I can go do hard things, and I can go provide for myself. And it was kind of like the confidence that it gave me, knowing I don't need to call my mom or my dad, which they didn't have resources to give. I was one of 7 kids. That I could kind of pay my own bills. I could kind of stand on my own. It gave me this confidence, and 2, it gave me kind of this unquenchable appetite to go continue to grow. It was kind of this like, man, if I can see that much progress in 4 months, what could happen next year? And so kind of stayed in the industry, and I made 200 grand the next year. And again, it was like, oh my gosh, this is
So
over,
amazing.
you know. But I remember kind of those famous last words of like, hey, I'm just going to take 1 semester off. Like I'm going to, I'm going to take, it's just this 1 semester. I'm going to really focus on work, and then I'm going to get back after it. And that was the last time I ever went to, ever went to school kind of on an undergrad fashion. And so,
I think that's awesome, because when I think about you, Case, I always think about somebody that's like continuously learning, really defines education in a different route, not your traditional sense, but in the traditional sense, you're teaching school at BYU, which is pretty awesome, and you go and you attend all kinds of Harvard Business School continuous education programs. I know we're a part of a OPM program. I know you've done like a handful of other different types of programs. So it's pretty awesome when you think about like this guy drops out of college to go and knock doors, and then it comes full circle. He's now teaching business at a very prestigious school, and going and attending one of the most prestigious schools in the world. So that's pretty freaking awesome.
no, I
So
mean, that's another one of the things I think about a lot, and I actually laugh at. I'm just like that. Like, I think I got a 19 or 20 on my ACT. Like, there's no way I could have got into BYU, and just you're there teaching class, and you're like, you guys are so smart. Like, you guys are just so awesome, and I couldn't have got into this school. This is like you guys are all way smarter than I am, And the thing that I learned about Harvard, which is so great, it's actually been like a very good life lesson. Is just there's times and seasons for everything, and I think when you try to force something, I think it's easier to think about it as like paint by numbers. Like, you do this, then you do this, then you do this, then you get this. And that's actually like a lot easier for us to like digest. It's like there's a plan, it's clear. I do these things, and then I get this. And that's just not my experience with entrepreneurship. It's kind of the opposite. The people that I know, it seems like it's a linear line, and I love that you're doing this podcast, because you get to actually hear the real stories, and it's never linear, and it was never clear. And it was kind of one thing led to another thing. But I remember I was with my dad. I think I was 30 years old, and I'm in Boston, and I'd flown him out to go to a Red Sox game with me. I was, we had a solar team. We launched Vivint Solar. We had a solar team out in Boston, and so I was out visiting the team, and flew my dad out to go to a game. And we're walking around the campus at Harvard, and he asked me, he said, "Did you ever think you would go, to a school like this?" And I remember, saying, "I think that ship sailed, my man." And then I actually like went home and started doing some research, and I realized they have really good executive programs you don't need an undergrad for. You can just kind of pay your way in. And I went and I did one of those on negotiation. It was just fantastic. And then I realized they have longer programs, kind of their version of their executive MBA, that you can actually just, if you put your credentials on there and your life experience, you can get into those. And it's kind of started this journey where, I think I've been back to Harvard over 20 weeks over the last decade.
it's
And it's been
unbelievable.
life
So you
changing
said
for me.
So you said this all started just from going out to a baseball game and taking a tour of Harvard, just kind of walking the campus with your dad?
Yeah, my dad, and he asked me like this simple question, and it was
That's
so
so
far
cool.
outside of anything I could have dreamed of. Like, it's like
Right.
I dropped out of UVU. I can't go to the school. And I remember like going out there and just being so excited about it. It was like this, like, man, I got to taste this experience, and I'm in like the big boy club. And I remember going back and telling like my buddies that had actually done MBAs there, and I just did not get this, like the I did not get the reception that I thought I would get. I thought everybody would be like, man, that's so great. And it was like, first, it's like, well, that's not a real MBA. And I'm just like, that's the weirdest answer I've ever got. Like, but it was like this kind of scarcity of like, oh, like, you're not stepping into like something that, I hold very dear. And I was like,
you're just
for
buying your
me,
way in. You're not real.
which I'm like, I know, like I'm like I'm faking it all the way, and it's like, but I'm trying, I'm working hard at it, and it's been really good for me, and it served me really well, and like I don't know what else to say other than you know it's been really great for me, and I wanted to tell you about it, and I thought you'd be excited, and you're not, so it's it's kind of one of those lessons that it's like you about half the people are cheering for you and half the people are hating on you. That's just kind of what it is. It's just kind of how life works.
That's life. That's life in general. I mean, if you're going to go and accomplish anything big, you're always going to have this. At least my experience has been, I'm going to have a divisive line. I'm going to have those people that are cheering, those people that are hating. So, but
Yep.
yeah, man, that is you're an inspiration to me to be able to go and participate in a Harvard program. So, this last year we started the OPM program. It's a 3-year, and for anybody that's listening to this, if you guys haven't looked into some of they have a variety of different
special
programs.
I mean anybody that has done it, they would life changing is kind of the consistent feedback. It's just it's a transformational experience. It's really special. I in the course of history, in all of time, there's never been an opportunity to go to the best school in the world or one of the best schools in the world with people from all over the globe. I think we had 16 or 17 billionaires in our class, or billionaire families.
Wild.
And then to be able to like study from like the best professors in the world, and actually like with planes and internet and kind of all of the 2023 life that we get to live today, we get to go have that experience. And I just think it's I think it's kind of a moment or a window in time that's special, and it's really fun. And it's fun. It was fun to go experience it with you and Daryl, to have friends out there and to be out there and just kind of go on that journey together. And I knew I'd been out there enough that there has never been a single week that I've gone out that it just hasn't been magical for me, and it hasn't been like very impactful. I've been able to get an idea or two ideas that I've been able to come back and implement into my business. And, everything that I'm doing right now was from work that I did over the last decade, and kind of snagging a skill here, a skill there, or a philosophy on the way to think that shaped me. It's helped me kind of become the man that I am today.
The thing that I respect about you, Casey, is you've done entrepreneurship a lot different than most people did. Some people like myself, they start entrepreneurship early and they just fail, screw up, fail. And I know you've had your failures over time, but the thing that I respected about you is like you took entrepreneurship as an employee and really like you were an entrepreneur even though you were an employee for the many years at Vivint. And because of it, you focused on your network, you focused on your knowledge, everything that you were creating. And like you set this foundation for everything that you're doing now. And so that you were like, when you decided to go out on your own, like, dude, you just freaking crushed it from day one because you had so many people that respected you. You had worked with so many incredible individuals. You had gained these relationships, and man, that's the thing I like that I love about your story is like you weren't afraid to invest the time what would be perceived, at least early in my career. I was like, man, what are you doing wasting your time working for somebody else? Right. Like that's that. I remember in 2008 when I was going to launch my first business. We're sitting in Gold's Gym. We're talking about how you're going to invest the next few years with Vivint. And I'm just like, dude, and I'm just thinking in my mind, like, what are you doing? Like that, like you're so much more capable of going out and doing this. And, but you weren't afraid to put in the time, put in the effort, get the
But I
education.
think that I think you know one, thank you, that's so kind, for you to say that. The second piece is I wasn't capable at that point. Like I didn't have the skills, I didn't have the mindset. Like the one of the greatest gifts I've ever had in my life, and I think any young entrepreneur that gets this gift, you are blessed. But I was able to have a mentor in Todd Peterson that was like the example of what it is to be a great entrepreneur. And I got this apprenticeship, I got this front row seat on how to be an investor, how to treat your employees and navigate really rough waters, um, lessons on finance that I never would have got. We took money from Goldman Sachs, and then we sold to Blackstone in a leverage buyout, and then we split off an equipment company and sold it, in a strategic sale, and then we took Vivint, Solar public on the New York Stock Exchange, and then we had multiple failed transactions, that were on the 1 inch line, and we securitized bonds and took debt to the public markets, and then we end up selling Vivint through a SPAC. And these are like complex, hardcore finance problems that you've got a kid that got a 20 on the ACT that just wouldn't have sniffed a seat at this table. And somehow, I end up being on the right team and having a good attitude and working hard and kind of working my way into the room. And I just I was able to be around that stuff and just learn by being there. And so I again, like, everybody's journey is different, and it surprises me sometimes. I was reading something on Michael Bloomberg the other day, and everybody looks at Michael Bloomberg and says, oh my gosh, look at that guy, he's one of the wealthiest guys in the world, he's done so well. He got fired, I think, when he was 39 years old. And that was when he started Bloomberg. 39. And I think about that and I'm like, that's my age, and he had just got canned from his corporate job. And, there's so many stories of people that really kind of come into their own later in life. I think the idea, you see like all these young tech entrepreneurs that are 22 years old and just go create a unicorn and, but I think that's more of the exception to the rule than the rule itself. I think, all of us, like, it takes time to go get the emotional maturity and the skills, and you just, there's kind of life lessons that you got to go get. And so, and what the magic of your journey, and this is Alex Dunn quote, Alex, when people ask him about being an entrepreneur, he says the best way to be an entrepreneur is to be an entrepreneur, like, to start a business. Like, if you want to learn what it's like to be an entrepreneur, go start a business. That's about the only way that you can really learn, because there's just lessons that you're going to be taught that you can't get taught otherwise. You're never going to learn that thing in a classroom.
One thing I want to point out is, well, you just went through like all your incredible experiences that you had with Vivint and being able to sit on the front row seat for all these things. Like, in today's society, at least for those that have what the E myth refers to, or the entrepreneur myth, right? They get this bug and like, oh, I got to start a company or whatnot. Like, it's promoted on TikTok, Instagram, right? Like, you talk about the young techs, like all those incredible things. Like, you cannot experience what you experienced just going and starting like some basic company. Like, it's a 1 in a million shot to be able to go through everything that you did. And that is one thing that, like, I was so jealous of during my career, and seeing you be able to participate in things. And it's actually ultimately what brought me back to your position, like coming in and working for somebody else. Like, I went for 4.5 years trying to run my own things, and it was like, failure, slight success, little success, not really thinking big. And like ultimately, I'm like, dude, I got to surround myself with Casey. I got to be in the presence of Todd Peterson. I got to go and be around these guys because there's so much more. And one thing I would encourage to like any listeners is like don't skip those steps. Don't think that you're missing out. There's so much time, as you talked about Michael Bloomberg, 39 years old, getting fired. He started. I mean, we know Colonel Sanders didn't start KFC until in his 60s. You know, like there's so many actual stories of people starting way later in life. It's because they get the experience. And so I think that's just such incredible.
There is something that I, would say is like a really good profession, a really good profession to start in if you're ambitious is sales. Like when you think of like a foundational skill that it's like this skill will serve you well for a long time, it's sales. And like, I was an employee at Vivint, but Vivint was an extremely entrepreneurial environment. They gave you, a very big box playground to go play in. And also like, I made over $1 million. I think it was like 11 of the 13 years there. So it wasn't like, I had a compensation package that like, you make as much as you're able to go make. And so, when I think about, I've got so many dear friends that are doctors and dentists and attorneys and all these traditional fields. But the reality is like to go be a specialized doctor right now, you're almost 15 or 20 years of schooling just to get started. And which, I look at like the service that they give to humanity and I'm just like, they are the great souls in the world because they're like saving lives. But when I think about like a financial decision, it's not a great financial decision. I mean, you think about,
right.
I've made a ton of money from a very young age and got the benefit of compounding. I was able to take $100,000 and go put it to work 20 years ago. And that's turned into a big number 20 years later, just by compounding, where somebody else, they give away those years and they also like have a pile of debt. And then you get to that point where you're like, hey, I've arrived. Like it's my time to shine. So you go get a big lifestyle and you kind of eliminate your opportunity to go get ahead financially. And you've got a big income, but you've got a big lifestyle. And, and I would say that's kind of the situation of so many of these like ultra successful, super smart people is they really don't have a whole lot of investment. And the way that Tony Robbins describes it is, if you don't own a business, if you don't have ownership, whether it's being an investor or being a founder, you're a dancing bear and you get paid when you dance. And, if you're working at McDonald's and you get paid $8 an hour, if you're a plastic surgeon, you make $1,000 an hour. Either way, the only way you get paid is when you dance. And so the goal for me was I don't want to be a dancing bear, like I want to go put my money to work so that, when I go on vacation, I took my family to Japan last week and I get a call from a buddy this last week. And this happens like a lot now. Get a call from a buddy and says, hey, that $400,000 that you put into that real estate deal 3 years ago in Vegas, UNLV just came and bought it from us. It's a 50% IRR. It's 2.5x your money. I got $1 million check coming for you next week. And I'm like, that's awesome. Amazing. And I'm chilling in Japan with my family and made $1 million, but it's from work that I did a long time ago. And it's that money that's been working really hard, making 50% a year when I'd forgot about it. And I think that's the magic of owning businesses and investing and being the founder of your own business is, if you can execute that's, wealth. People who want to generate wealth is created in concentration. It's maintained through diversification. And so it's just, you got to go. Most wealth is created by somebody starting a business and creating that equity from growing the business and have ownership in the business. And then, you either take dividends out or you go sell the business, and that's where you go create a nest egg that you go invest, and you go keep it by spreading it around over a lot of stuff, but you make it by focusing on one thing.
So, you brought up two things that I want you to expound a little bit more. So, one, you talked about traveling with your family last week in Japan. I know you prioritize travel with your family quite a bit. Like, tell me, like, where's your focus with your family? What drives you about your family? Like, why are families so important for you as an entrepreneur?
There's a book that's one of the most impactful books that I've ever read in my entire life. It's a book called How Will You Measure Life by Clayton Christensen. And
Love
I
that
had the
book.
opportunity, he's super famous, Harvard Business School professor, wrote The Innovator's Dilemma kind of in the early to late 90s. He was completely in the heart of everything that had to do with technology. Like and to this day, his stuff influences, so many of the technology thinkers. But he wrote this book called How Will You Measure Life? And I remember I was 27 years old. And, I'd worked at Vivint for 5 years. I'd got some equity early in the company, and Blackstone came and bought the company for $2 billion. And I think I made $7 or $8 million at 27 or 28 years old. And at that
Big
point in my
payday.
life, I was just like, oh my gosh, like I never have to work again. It's like it's over, but I'm sitting there thinking about it, and and Todd Santiago, he was the CEO of 2Gig at the time. He ended up being my boss for a long time at Vivint. But Todd gave me this book. He said, "Hey, this is a really great book." And I remember going and reading it. And Clayton Christensen, he talked about your deliberate choices and then your emergent opportunities. And he also talked about what we value. And he gave it, a simple definition of value. He said, you value where you spend your time, where you spend your money, and where you spend your energy. And it must have been like a really pivotal time in my life, a really reflective time, because I actually like took that so personal. And so I went and I put a spreadsheet together, and I put time, value, and money. And then I put all of the things that I said that I valued. I value my relationship with my wife. I value my relationship with my kids. I value financial independence. I value education. I value my relationship with my family. And I kind of put all these like said values. And then I actually like put a test to them. I said, how much time have I given to this thing last week, last month, in the last year? How much emotional energy am I investing in it? How much money have I invested in it? And there was just these massive gaps in my life. There was these massive gaps between what I said that I valued and where I was spending my time, money, and energy. And a number of those came back to my family, where I said, I'd kind of justified, hey, I'm going to go kill it now, and I'm going to go sacrifice now, but I'm doing it for you guys, and I'm, my kids were young, and I'm doing it so that I can have that freedom down the road. But I was, I don't think
But
it's either
it
or,
wasn't lining up.
No, it wasn't lining up. And I think ultimately, like, if I wouldn't have made those changes, it would have been 10 years later, 20 years later, and I still would have been making the same trade-offs and still would have been making the same justifications. And I know that because that's the tendency that I fall into. Like business is really fun. And you get this instant gratification, and you have a scorecard, and you're either winning or losing, and you get this action. And then you go home, and I'm watching my kids, and I've got, 2 kids in poopy diapers, and, and I'm
Right.
just like, this is a lot less fun.
This is
Like
not
I'm
fun.
like, I want to go pass these off to, somebody else and go back to the game where, you know, like I'm playing in the game. And so it's one of those things where I made some changes in my life at that point that have influenced the last, 13 years of my life. And one of those specifically was with my family, where me and my wife, we just said we value travel and we value our family culture. And so since then, that's been something that we've been very deliberate at, once or twice a year, picking a spot on the map and going. And,
So talk
getting
a
away
little
from
bit
work
more
and
about
everything
that.
like that.
Talk a little bit more about that. Like, what are your best practices? What are some principles that you live by? What is the family culture that you try to create? Because I love this about you.
So number one, it's like, I don't know, Tony Robbins, he's so big on immersion. He says we truly grow when we're fully immersed. And I think about like my mission and how much I grew on my mission because I was all in. Or I think about like high school sports. The reason I love high school sports is because I was all in, and when I've done well in different companies, it's because I'm fully committed. And so I think, where I see the biggest breakthrough with my wife and with my kids is when I'm fully immersed, and so for me, the best way that I've found to do that, and again, it's taken advantage of 2023 and planes and hotels and, but we'll pick a spot in the country that we've, or in the world that we've never been. And we like block out some time. Last year it was like this unique window in my life where we blocked out 5 weeks. We'd wanted to do it for a long time, and we took our whole family to Europe for 5 weeks. And it was a lot. It was too much. The trip was 7 weeks, and we ended up cutting it short in 5. And it was like real work, but it was so magical. Like something we never forget. And so this time we left our younger kids home, just because they can't fully be there, and it changes the dynamic of the trip.
Right.
We said, let's take the 3 oldest ones, and let's go for 8 days, let's go for a week. That's enough time that we can get completely away, but it's also, and so we allocate real money. It costs real money, and you can do it whatever kind of budget you're on. We're at a spot right now where it's like, we're doing first class tickets. We're going to the AMA. Like we're going to go do it, the way that I want to do it, but it doesn't have to be that way. You go have the exact same trip, staying at a cheap Airbnb somewhere, and so it's like the principle is I'm eating breakfast, lunch, dinner, and with my family all day. And when we go hard. We'll get tour guides, and we'll go see the cultural things, and we'll eat the local foods, and we'll go to the local mosques or the temples, and we go experience the religions, and we want to be. We want to be a family that's inclusive. We want to be somebody that like loves people. And you can't really see somebody until you've, experienced what they experience. And I always just come back just, one, so full of gratitude for the country that we live in. We had one meal in Japan that was like high end, authentic Japanese food. And it was gnarly. Like it was like, the eel was in the ocean like 30 minutes before, and it is, still moving on my plate.
Still raw.
And I've got my 8-year-old and my 12-year-old, my 14-year-old, my wife, and I'm hammering it down. It's just like, it was, a lot, but they, we went and we had the meal, but like we get back and we have Chick-fil-A, and we're like, we really like Chick-fil-A a lot better, So it's like one of those things, but
right.
I don't know, like the spirit of my family and like the camaraderie, there's these magic little moments where we were at this museum. It's this anime, this real famous animator. I'm spacing his name right now, but he's got a museum in Japan, kind of this iconic animator. Right. And my daughter's into that. So we go to this museum, and my 2 oldest daughters that are way different, one of them is an artist. One of them, she doesn't like sports, she, loves singing. The other one, she's like hardcore cheerleader, like lives for, her friends, and they're way different.
Right.
But they're really close, and we see them, sneak off, and they're laughing and having, lunch together. And me and my wife just look at them, we're like, this is the reason that we do the trip. If we didn't have these trips where we were forced to be together and like lean on each other, you end up growing in different directions. We don't want that. We want to be a family that, has real relationships. And the only way that I know how to do it is you go spend real time, like real, meaningful, authentic time. And that's where
Awesome.
You kind of peel back the onion and talk about the stuff that really matters.
So you talk about traveling and whatnot, which I think everybody wants to do or whatnot. Let's talk about like what what are some daily habits or routines that you have with your family, or maybe the weekly ways in which you really take advantage of that relationship and are able to bond outside of, obviously 5 weeks in Europe is fantastic. You're going to get some great bonding there. Like what are some best practices, principles that you try to live by with your family?
Just kind of like on the daily, or like on the,
Yeah, daily, weekly,
we
like just what are some consistent practices that
we, we,
that
we,
you
we
do?
we just build stuff into like our life that, you know, forces us to be together. So like Lake Powell has become really central to our family, and it's got all the ingredients that I care about. It's in nature, you get away from your phone, everybody's together, there's enough variety, everybody can go kind of do what they want to do, everybody likes it. And so it's something that, everybody looks forward to going. And there's just not that many things that we found that everybody's having a good time. And so we'll go 3 or 4 times a summer. And that, like, I didn't grow up doing that, you know, I
Right.
never grew up doing that. So, and it's become a real central part of our life. We try to have traditions over holidays. And, you know, one of the things that I started doing is we take leadership in our family. I'm one of 7 kids. My wife's one of, 4 kids, but we try to take leadership to go create family reunions. We try, and so we'll, you know, long in advance, we'll, suggest a
So
place
you
we're
guys are
going. We fit the bill, so we actually
right.
like allocate, money to, so that, some people in the family that are at a different stage in life, that they can still come experience it. We try to create environments where our kids can be around their grandparents and their cousins. And, so all this stuff, it's like, it doesn't happen by accident. And it's the same with success in business. It's the same with success financially. It's like, you have to be deliberate in your plan to get the outcomes that you want. They're just not going to happen by accident.
I think with what you're talking about with family, I think that's probably the easiest one to put on the back burner, especially like extended family, siblings, parents, right? These reunions. And at least my experience, like you said, everything's got to be on purpose, on deliberate, because we always put it off. Oh, maybe next week, next year, 2 years from now, whatever it is. So I think that's like so crucial that we treat it the same way that we do everything
I
else,
mean,
all of our other
it was one of
financial.
those. It goes back to that experience I had, reading How Will You Measure Life. I at that point, I looked at my relationship with my mom and dad, and that was a relationship that I said that I valued. And I hadn't called my dad in a month. I hadn't, been up there. I hadn't spent any time. And over the course of the last 13 years, I've repented. I've changed that, and so, me and my dad have flown out to Wrigley, and I kind of made a decision where I said, when I'm in, we loved baseball growing up. That was something that we shared, but we didn't have a lot of financial resources growing up. And so, and I was traveling a lot with work. And so I said, hey, when I'm in a city where there's like a team that's playing, I'm going to fly my dad out. We'll go spend a half a day together. We'll go to a ball game. We'll go get dinner. We'll catch up. And that's something that's like, I'm going to be in the city anyway. It just takes a little. And so we've been to Boston multiple times. We've been to New York multiple times. We've been to Wrigley. We've been to, and I did those, for a number of years. A couple of years back, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago. My dad, he suffers from type 2 diabetes, and ended up having his leg amputated just above the knee. And it's actually been really great. He's actually been healthier since the amputation, which is, crazy. But I remember in that moment when he was getting the operation, and we took our kids up to see him, and I just had this crystal clear distinction of, I'm so glad that I took the advantage to go be with him when he had his health and when he was alive. And I don't, it's something that I don't
Yeah.
want regrets when I go to my deathbed. I don't want to say, oh man, I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have said thank you. I wish, I try to, like, just when I'm feeling it, do it. If I've got gratitude in my heart, call the person that, I'm grateful for, and just tell them, be vulnerable and just tell them thank you. And, if there's an experience I want to go have, try to just like schedule it and do it, you know, and it
What's
served me
pretty
really well.
awesome what's pretty awesome is that you came to this realization at age 27 or whatnot, when you had this big financial event, and you read this book, and you did your journaling practices, which, by the way, Casey is one of the best in class journal practicers. I mean, he's a motivator. When with Sunday planning, everybody, they mimic him all over the world with their Instagram stories or whatnot. So I think it's so awesome that you have that experience. You know, my experience with finance is real similar. Is that, like, when you have a financial event, it really gives you the freedom to realize that money isn't everything, and that there's so much more to life. Because I think so few people ever get to experience that. They're chasing that dollar their whole life, and thinking that someday I'm gonna be happy, someday I'm going to spend time with my kids, someday I'm going to, be with my parents, or really value the relationships after I have X dollars amount in my bank account or whatnot. And I think a very important lesson to learn is, like, there's never a dollar amount that will define that, and that on any budget, on any bank account number, or whatever else, you can make these choices right now. Like, you don't have to
No,
wait
like
until.
the point that you're making is like completely true, and it's completely profound. You know, it's the widow's mite. It's basically saying, like, if you wouldn't give $1 out of 10 to charity, you're not going to give 100 million out of 1 billion. Like, and it's easier to say, oh, if I had it, I would give it. But the reality is, like, abundance, being abundant and being given happens before you get it. You know, that isn't something that you get after. And the second one, we did this conference just barely, this MW3 conference, and we had Gail Miller come speak. And, you know, her and
Love the
Larry, they
Millers.
built, you know, really iconic Utah business, own the Jazz, you know, own ton of dealerships.
Incredible
They've
book, by the
transformed the
way.
business.
Have you read his book,
Yep, driven. Yeah.
Driven? Yeah, it's such a good book. But anyways, keep going. I cut you off.
But she gets up and she talks about Larry, and she said, Larry would always say, your wealth is what you have if you lost everything. Your true wealth is what you have if you lost
I love
all of
that.
your money.
Your
And he
wealth is.
basically said,
Love
if
that.
I lost everything, I could go sell apples, and I promise I'd be the best apple salesman. And I'd have people that care about me, and I'd have family that cares about me, and I'd have good friends, and I'd go get it all back again. And, you know, I think about that and I'm like, it's pretty true. Like, you know, if you're defined by the dollar amount in your checking account, you're living a very shallow life. And I don't want to discount how important financial freedom and financial literacy is. I'm passionate about it. Like, having resource allows you to do things and make an impact that other people just can't do. Like, money is a magnifier. It'll make you more of what you are. But that being said, it's not what makes you happy. Like, anybody who's been through a big financial exit realizes, like, it's a fun, like, event, and then you're over it and you move on to the next thing. And, you know, the problems, yep, the problems, they're always there, and the opportunity to be happy is always there, regardless of where you're at in the journey.
It really is incredible. I think, just as human beings, we love to fantasize that problems will not exist when we have a certain dollar amount, right? And, like, to your point, I mean, they continue to exist. The good things continue to be good, and the bad things continue to be bad. And it's pretty remarkable. So you brought up, charitable aspects. Another thing that I love about Casey is he's a giver. He's someone that is always looking out for others. He's not one that wants to just have it for himself, or and not greedy one bit. One of my favorite experiences I've actually had with Casey, that just kind of sitting on the sideline and watching, was we were at Harvard Business School this last fall. And I think it was like the World Series or something. We were watching game 2 or 3 of the World Series, or maybe it was a football game or something, in the main area on a Saturday, or maybe it was a Sunday. and Casey had ordered either some cookies or pizza. I can't remember what it was. The driver shows up. He's out there hustling with his wife. She's there in the passenger seat. They're delivering stuff late at night, late Saturday night. And Casey immediately recognized like what this guy was about and that he was giving his all. And Casey had him wait, ran up to his room, grabbed a stack of cash, and walked him out. And here's the thing: is like Casey didn't do it to to be known or shown by. In fact, like I asked him about it afterwards because I figured he was doing something like that, and that's the only reason I know about the story. So I mean that's one thing I've always respected about you, just your desire to do good and give back and whatnot. And like, so tell me about like some guiding principles, maybe things that you were taught as a kid or whatnot that has influenced this level of giving.
I think part of it is just I think it's, you know, my philosophy on life is that the secret to living is giving, that we're happy or we're fulfilled. Like my definition of spirituality or being close to God is when I'm growing personally, when I'm progressing, and when I'm serving. That's when I'm the happiest. That's where I feel the closest to God. And so, when I think about personal growth, it's education, it's, growing a business, like it's, working on your family, working on yourself, all those things, bring a lot of fulfillment. And when you're kind of not doing those things, it doesn't matter how much money you have, you're just not like fully fulfilled. And then the second one is if you don't get outside of yourself and serve, and so that you're just not going to be happy. And so like, I mean, this morning, and I had really great mentors. I go back and I think about being able to work under Todd for the years that I worked under him. And he is the most generous human that I know. And I just, I watched him. It was this specific practice where he would always have cash. He'd go get a pile of cash and he would look for opportunities on a daily basis to when somebody was in need. And he's thousands of stories at this point of a gas station attendant or filling somebody's, gas up or, whatever it is. And I just admired that practice and I've adopted it. And so like, I'll have a bag and I give until it's gone and then I'll go fill it back up again. And like this morning, my wife, she's jet lagged, she's sleeping in, we knew she was going to sleep in. I was going to get up with the kids. And so, order some DoorDash. So I got, some food coming over to the house and I'm rushing my kids out to school and I'm going to pick up the food that just got dropped off. And I see the girl that, had dropped it off. And same thing. I've got my little bag of cash and I just, hey, go give her some money, go knock on her window, rolls down, give her $100. And she just starts crying this morning, doesn't speak good English. Awesome. And I'm like, that's like the greatest gift. Like I get to go take that energy into my day of like, I get to kick off the day, lighting somebody up and surprising somebody. And it's just like, it's this micro giving that doesn't, in the whole scheme of things, it's a smaller piece of a tithe. It's a smaller piece of a commitment to give. But the micro giving is, something that I've adopted that I, would push everybody to say, like, if you want like just shots of adrenaline and like feel good, find a way on a daily basis to whatever your budget is, if it's $10 or $20 or $50, whatever it is, and go find somebody that needs it and surprise them and give it. And it'll just make your day. And it's made my day. And, so many times I did it this morning, so what you're talking about, it's not like an event. It's a way of life. It's kind of who right. I want to be I want to be an abundant person, that I live in abundance. And that I believe that, when you cast your bread on the waters, it always comes back tenfold. And my experience is that's what I've experienced. Like I don't know anybody that is less wealthy from giving. The people that I know that are the most generous are also the wealthiest. And I don't know how that principle works in the universe, but I just know that it works. I just know that what you put out to the world comes back to you in abundance, kind of more than you can receive.
I love I love the best practice or principle of micro giving, because like you said, it can be done on any budget, and it puts you in a position to be inspired. I believe in something called the spirit, and that God can speak to me, right, in certain ways, and I know you do, Casey. But when you are looking for those opportunities, you have that wad of cash or whatnot with the exact intent that I am looking to be inspired. Like that's phenomenal. And like you said, there's not a better feeling in the world. And frankly, I think that's way better. The macro giving is awesome, right? These people that donate, wings of hospitals and are changing hunger and different things, but which is awesome. But I've always found, to your point, like, more satisfaction in the consistent micro giving. And so, dude, I appreciate you sharing that.
Well, and
What
and
are
I'd go so far as to say it's and, like, it's not either or.
right,
It's
right,
give to your church, give to your community, and give to the person that's the DoorDash person that's out hustling on a Friday night because they need the money. And like, if you can incorporate that into your life, you will be happier and you will be wealthier. And I don't know how the wealth one works because you're giving something away, but I just know that it's true because I've experienced it. But the happiness one is obvious. It's just, and what's crazy is every single time you go through this tug of war of scarcity and abundance, and you, like, it doesn't matter when it happens. It's like, you hold on and then you release. And once you release and you become abundant, it's just, it's like, the world opens to you and opportunities come to you that wouldn't come to you otherwise. And again, it's like an energy thing, or it's
right.
there's
Well,
some
you
frequency
say,
that you tap into.
yeah, you say you don't know how it works with the wealth, but I mean, basically, what you're doing every single time is you are casting a vote for abundance, right? Every single time that you share with others, you're casting this vote, and in your mind, in your heart, you believe that, like, there's enough. There's enough for me, and when you believe that there really is enough, and you're really having an abundant mindset, you automatically will make more money. It's a principle that drives the universe. There's no doubt in my mind that abundant people are the most successful people. It's that scarcity, and it's so sad to see so many people suffer from scarcity. They're just trying to hold on to that little thing that they have, and they just
Well,
never open their eyes.
and all of us do, to an extent. Like, there's times where I'm scarce, and there's
Yes.
times when I'm abundant, and I try to be abundant most of the time, and it's a muscle that I try to work and I try to develop so that I live most of my life the most abundant that I can live. But it is a muscle that you have to work on it on a daily basis and a weekly basis, or it atrophies, and you know what I mean? There
Yep.
is no neutral ground. You're either becoming more abundant or more scarce, and there's no middle ground. Like, you have to be putting in the work.
I love a principle that you're bringing up. Just that, one, it's impossible to be perfect all the time, right? And a lot of times, when we're striving for perfection, we beat ourselves up over whatever it may be. The principle being that casting votes, right? Like, that most, if I'm casting votes most of the time of abundancy, I'm winning, right? Like, 51-49 is still winning. It's not a
Yep.
big win, but it's still winning. And 70-30 and 80-20, right? Like, that's really the goal, is just casting these votes, whether that's fitness, whether that's spirituality, abundance, family.
Taking your kind of example and even just elaborating on it, I think you're winning if you, are 10% abundant and 90% scarce. But
Yeah,
that's where you're at in life, and you're making progress. If, like, naturally you grew up in an environment that was extremely scarce, and that's just how you were raised, and you did not have much, but you're more abundant today than you were yesterday, I think that's winning. And the same thing with your body. Like, if
absolutely.
you're 200 pounds overweight, but you go put in some work to be a little bit better, you're winning. Like progress, just like progressing, just moving in a direction that you want to go move. That's what brings happiness. That's what brings excitement. And we're all like, if you bring like a philosophical view in it, like all of us are like babies compared to God. It's like all of us, like we think we're doing a lot until we like, you look at there's always a bigger fish. There's always somebody that's, more developed or more advanced or whatever it is. And so it's not about comparison, but it is about like being accountable and keeping score and being a little bit better. And if you can be a little bit better, one, that you're going to be fulfilled in life, and that two, over time, little incremental steps consistently turn into big life outcomes. And I think both you and myself have seen that. You knew me 20 years ago and I knew you 20 years ago, and we're not the same humans 20 years later. Yeah. And so much of it has to do with putting in a tremendous amount of work with our families, I remember, Case, our profession.
To your point, I remember coming to you in 2013, and it had been 5 or 6 years since we had spent any time together. And I remember thinking in like 2007, 2008 that we were at real similar points in our career. And then when we met back up, you had clearly progressed financially as a person and whatnot. And I was still floundering a little bit. And I remember talking with you and just asking, like, dude, Casey, what are you doing that's different than me? And your point right here is exactly what you shared with me. It's just like the little things, consistently, like 1% better every single day, stacked upon each other, compounded, had yielded these absolutely incredible results. And that is like right then in 2013, I'm just like, I'm going to do that.
What I know of you and what I've experienced of you, and this is like actually like really great to like acknowledge, is like sometimes the life scorecard doesn't paint the score of like what really happened, and I remember when you came over to Vivint, you kind of got your butt whooped a little bit going and running your own company. But the reality is you had worked your butt off building that company, and you had grown a tremendous amount. And like you had learned life lessons that if you wouldn't have learned those lessons, you never would have gone and built the company that you built down the road, and like you showed up, and day one, you were, if not the top rep in the company, you were one of the top, and you didn't run, one of the top offices. Like it wasn't like, oh, I just am going to decide to, like that muscle was there. You built that muscle. It was just, and like the score over time averages always played itself out. And so at that point in life, it wasn't showing like you were doing as well. And you look at now and it's like disproportionate on the other end. And the reality is, I think you're kind of the same guy today that you were then. You've just been like grinding at it for longer. You know what I mean? And time has been able to go work itself out, but you weren't working any less hard when I knew you in 2008 than you're working today. Like or 2004, like you've always had that grind and that hustle and that passion. I think that's what makes you who you are. And it's a common trait for anybody that I've seen that's successful.
You bring up grind and hard work. And I think that's one of the things that, a lot of people have, but one thing I do want to point out that you shared with me then, and I've been able to apply in my life, is just this consistency of not crazy things, right? We're talking reading on a regular basis, planning on a regular basis, spending time with my family, starting a workout regimen that is consistent, like those things compounded over time is really where I've been able to find a lot of success over the last 10 years. And it was much of what you would share with me, even though up until that point, like to your point, I had worked hard but I was hitting my head against, and a lot of it was from a competitive aspect, right? Like I was trying to compare myself against others. And whenever I did that, I fell short. And it wasn't until that the same time when you shared these things with me, and like there was a big aha moments in my life, it was when I realized that this competition is only Chris Lee versus Chris Lee. As long as I am better every single day, then I'm ultimately going to get to where I was at. And like, that's what brought me joy. And, I read How Will You Measure Your Life, and like all these different things, and really started to understand that there's motivational factors outside of money. There's factors outside of competition. Speaking of which, Case, you've had a ton of financial success. Like, what drives you now? Like, what pushes you? What gets you out of bed? You've shared a lot of things already, but what additional things drive you?
I mean, dude, money. Like, I'm a coin operated. Like, I love making money. Like, I'm not gonna
For
like
sure.
sugarcoat it. Like business is a game, and it's a spiritual game, but it's a game, and playing games are really fun. And the cool thing about money is it's actual scoreboard. It's a scoreboard. If you're winning or losing
How
in
are
a
you
game.
not satisfied? You've got your 9-figure net worth. Like, how do you find motivation? Obviously it's fun and those type of things, but like, what do you tell yourself that keeps you from not being satisfied?
I mean, I'm just satisfaction is like, you know, this is what I'd say: satisfied needs don't motivate. And I always have a list of 50 goals in every category that just light me up. Like, I put in work on a daily basis to get really clear on what gets me excited, and so you know, I've got family stuff, I've got golf goals, I've got hunting goals, I've got, you know, family goals, I've got business goals, I've got investing goals, I've got a
Share a
hundred
couple
things.
of those. What are well,
I mean,
give me two or three of
I
those.
do. Yeah, I do it on a daily basis. I'll write 3 questions. My, you know, 2023 40-year-old routine is I'll wake up at 6 a.m. I'll go do a meditation. It's a Tony Robbins meditation. I do the same one every day. I'll rotate through them, but it's a guided meditation where I go through gratitude. I go through some deep breathing. I go through, experiences that I've had, and it just puts me in like a really great emotional state. And then I'll list out 3 questions. I'll list out, hey, what gets me excited? What are my biggest opportunities, and who am I? And I'll list out a long list. At this point, it's 70 or 80 answers to who am I. And the reason that I'll do that, few things drive behavior. I don't know of anything that drives behavior more than identity. What our identity is. And the reality is we've grown up with other people telling us who we are. And so on that specific thing, I try to rewire my head to have the most positive identity that I can have. And so, I'm a force for good. I'm a force for God. I'm honest. I'm driven. I'm a billionaire. I'm a spiritual billionaire. I'm a light. I'm love. I'm present. I'm passionate. I'm absolutely certain. And I could list out 80 of these things
I
that it's
love it.
language that I can give to myself, that, that conversation that you have, when you're not having that conversation, when that subconscious noise is going, I want it to be just, talking about the stuff that's really good, that's building me up instead of tearing me down. The second one is I'll list out what are my biggest opportunities. The reason why this is so profound, Peter Drucker, he's kind of the father of modern management theory. He wrote 50 plus books, super influential on the way we think about management and business. And he wrote a book called The Effective Executive. And in this book, he says the effective executives, they spend the majority of their time, their best energy on opportunities, and they starve problems. And what'll happen when you see a higher level of success is that you will have more problems. If you have more kids, you're going to have more problems. If you have, a bigger business, you're going to have more problems. And it's like, and you need to get disciplined to go figure out how to starve problems, give them the least amount of energy, and maintain your very best energy for your biggest opportunities. And so for me to do that, I need to identify what those are. And so I'll list out those every single day. What are my biggest opportunities? in Sandlot? What's my biggest opportunities as a family office? What's my biggest business development opportunities as a dad, as a husband, as an athlete, as a scholar? And I'll know what are those 3 to 5 to 7 things, and I refresh it every day. And then the last one
Dude,
is I'll say what
I
gets me
think that's
excited.
so. Sorry for cutting you off, but man, I think that's so
No, go
profound.
ahead.
Like that, just the focus on the opportunities and starving out the problems. I think everybody needs to hear that, right? Like, because it's so easy to get caught up in the problems, especially if you're running a business, running a family, running anything, right? Instead of looking at the opportunities. I think that is extremely profound. And then you said,
The problems will steal your life from you. Like, you will literally
yes,
get bogged down in them, and they will steal your life. They'll steal your time. They'll steal your emotional energy. They'll steal your happiness. And so it's not that you can't let like a fire burn your house down. So you have to address them. So the point isn't to like stick your head in the sand and act like they don't exist. It's to give them the minimum amount of effort to like check the box and then be done with them, and then move on to where you can actually like go move your life forward. And if you aren't clear on what those opportunities are, you'll get bogged down in the problems. It's just, that's kind of like the way of life. But then the last list of questions that I'll do is what gets me excited. And it goes back to your first question of motivation. At any given time, like, I'll have 30, 50 things that just light me up. It's building a new houseboat. It's hitting a business objective, with Sandlot. It's closing a particular deal. It's playing golf at like the local golf course. It's summer. It's going
yeah,
cycling. It's like, and actually like just being aware of like, this stuff makes me happy. This stuff doesn't make me happy. I'm going to go spend my life on the stuff that makes me happy. And I think when people haven't actually like differentiated the two, you end up giving your life to stuff that you don't want to do. You spend your life with people you don't want to spend time with. You focus on business endeavors that aren't worthy of your time and attention. And you're doing that because you haven't kind of answered the questions before. And the opposite's true. When I'm really clear on what my opportunities are, when life presents me an opportunity to go do one of those things, I can be very bold in saying yes, like immediately. Like, I can just say, yep, I'm in. Because when you message me for this podcast, like, there's no hesitation. It's like, yes, I'm in. And the reason that I can say that like really quickly, is because I've decided a long time ago, um, this is a high quality opportunity. This is something that, for me personally, matters. So anyway, I
I
could
love
go
it.
on this
So,
stuff forever.
you
This
said
passion
the three
project.
questions. What was the first one? Is it who am I, or what do I represent?
Who am I? Who am I? That one sounds the most simplistic. It's by far the most profound.
Right, because
Our
that's where you're
identity
formulating your
drives,
identity.
dude. You're never gonna make more money than you think you're gonna make. You're never gonna, build a bigger business than you actually believe that you can go do. All of us, we have like this thermostat of our self concept or identity, and we kind of perform up to the level that we think we should. And so the goal is to like consistently work on that and upgrade it, and, you know, have a better view of myself. If you don't have a great view of yourself, the world's not going to, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely,
the
absolutely.
world's not going to see you better than you see yourself. Leadership's a very lonely place, and you've
Amen.
got to believe in yourself long before anybody else believes in you.
So I got who am I? What
Who am I?
so
What are my biggest opportunities, and what gets me excited?
Love that. Love that. Dude, I think that best practice right there is worth the whole podcast. I think sharing that with the world, because I mean, dude, this is great stuff. Before we let you go, I know you're a busy dude. Some couple best practices from a fitness level, or physical fitness. What are some of your best practices?
it for me, like waking up early is the foundation of everything. Like if I'm up by 6 a.m., I have the time to meditate, to study, and then to go work out. So for me, like my regimen today, um, I'll do yoga, I'll ride a Peloton, I've got a golf simulator that I try to swing on a daily basis. I'll do cold plunges. I'll do weight training and hit workout. It kind of doesn't matter what I plug into that hour, but there's an hour from 7 to 8 o'clock that I'm doing those things, that I'm physically working my body and I'm sweating. And so like today,
So if I'm so
cold plunges there, Peloton's there, yoga's there, but at different points in my life, it's been CrossFit, it's been running
right.
I kind of don't think it matters except for you're doing something every day. Like if you work your body and work your mind and you've done that, like before the day starts, your day's basically done. Anybody that has those habits, like you can have a really crappy day and it was a pretty productive day if you just do those two things: wake up, study, meditate, work out.
Amen. I've talked to a lot of successful people, and really what you're sharing is just that good quality morning routine, winning the day before the day even begins, from a fitness spirituality level. That's freaking awesome.
Well, you just
Um,
show up different. You show up with different energy. You show up with
yeah,
different confidence, like when you've won the day. And the
absolutely.
opposite, if I sleep in and miss my study and miss my meditation and miss my workout and I'm like rushing out the door, throwing my clothes on, I'm showing up with a different energy than if I like
Amen.
got after it in the morning. You know what I mean? So it's just, well, and again, like some of the times it just doesn't work out. So it's not about being perfect, but it is about like progressing and being a little bit better today than I was yesterday. And I think, it's very important to draw the line between those two things. Like it is your job to get better. It's not none of us are ever going to be perfect. So it's not about perfection, but it is about progress. And we can go get better on a daily basis. And ultimately that's what's going to make us happy.
Love that. Casey, I just want to thank you so much for your time today, man. Like I said, I know you're busy, you got a lot going on, man. You've dropped some incredible bombs. Uh, we appreciate you being with us, and thanks so much, man. Have a great day.
Yeah. I can't wait to follow your podcast. And, it's just, yeah, I can't wait to hear other people's stories. There's nothing that I love more than to hear people's journeys. It's insightful to just get a view
Yeah,
into like how successful people think. They think different than everybody else because like you win the battles in private, and the accolades come in public, but the real work's done when no one's watching. And so I can't wait to follow you and hear these stories.
appreciate it, my dude. Okay, dude. Thanks for your
All right,
time.
brother.
We'll be
Yep, we'll see
chatting.
you.
Thanks.